because the typical sales copy really doesn't work anymore. Back in the day, it was just about buy now, this and that. And now people really are more sensitive of being sold to. So you really do have to get creative with the way that you are phrasing things so that they don't feel like you're being salesy.
Yeah, and these days, consumers are more savvy while being more bombarded with messages, marketing messages than ever before. And there's an expectation. Consumers expect, even in a sales message, they expect value.
So today's topic is writing social media posts that sell. So if you've ever been in a position where you're just not sure what to post, or writing the posts in a way that the audience will respond to, or in a way that actually gets you conversions, you are in the right place. And please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you're notified of new videos that have to do with social media, marketing, and tutorials. Today, my guest is Ryan Montes, who is an NLP and hypnotherapy trainer. And he's going to join me on this topic because, believe it or not, NLP has a lot to do with marketing and copywriting. So welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Milena. Very, very happy to be here.
So today what we're really talking about is copy and what makes good copy versus bad copy, or in another way to say it is effective copy versus ineffective copy. Now, let's just start off by defining the word copy and what's the difference between copy or just writing in general. So Ryan, how would you define copy?
So copy, simply put, is just writing where there's an intent to have the reader do something once they've read the writing. Often if it's in a sales context, the intent is to have the reader either, engage with you, the salesperson, or book a sales call or a strategy call, or potentially buy a product or sign up for something. It's writing with the intent of getting somebody to do something because of what you've written.
So copywriting is essentially persuasive writing.
That's a very good way of putting it. Yeah, it's being persuasive in written form. Yeah.
So what does NLP have to do with copywriting?
So NLP, of course, stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming, which is just some fancy jargon. Basically, it means the language of the mind. Okay, people who understand NLP understand how people communicate internally and how information is received by other people. Okay, and what we know now, what science tells us, is that all of the information that we process in our mind is processed very rapidly at the unconscious level, and then it sort of bubbles up into our conscious awareness for further consideration. And so what happens when a person is reading through a caption or looking at your marketing information, looking at your material, your content, whatever, all of it is going through their unconscious mind rapidly, and it's going through a set of what we call filters at the unconscious level. And in a matter of microseconds, those filters are determining whether your information is useful and interesting or something to be ignored and something that the person is going to move on from. So NLP comes into play because it gives us an understanding of what is happening at the unconscious level for the reader. And when we know what are these filters, what are the check boxes that they're looking to check when they're looking for interesting and useful information, we can craft our copywriting, we can craft our content in such a way that is appealing to the filters at the unconscious level of the audience and is going to check those unconscious check boxes of the things that the audience is looking for in good and useful and trustworthy information.
So for example, as small business owners, we're usually trying to sell something, promote a product, a service, that type of thing. So can you give an example of something that would be kind of good copy versus bad copy when you're making an offer?
Yeah, so, the easiest way to put it, and I think the best example, is we need to avoid going into data points in our copy. We need to avoid making, sort of black or white or statistical lists of information, which is something that, we see quite often in captions online, right? And we want to appeal more to the emotional understanding of, the audience, right? Through story, through metaphor. We want to think, why is my message going to be important to the audience? And when we hold that question in our mind and craft our message with that, sort of intent in mind, it's going to automatically shape our word selection. It's going to automatically shape our message in a way that's more appealing to the, audience that we're targeting.
So for example, I'm just thinking, just to give some practical on the court kind of examples, like the whole kinesthetic, auditory, like how do you appeal to all of that when it comes to writing content or let's say promotional content copy for a spa?
Yeah. So, you raise a good point there. You mentioned the kinesthetic, auditory, visual, what we call the VACOG senses. That's something that's really important to consider when we're writing. And when we're talking about that, we're talking about representational systems. So just to give you really quickly, 40% of the population prefers, visual imagery when they're reading or consuming information. 40% prefers kinesthetic, which is like touchy feeling information and delivery, and 20% prefer auditory. Now, here's the thing, whatever you are innately is the way you tend to communicate and write. So if I'm a visual person, my writing tends to appeal more to people who are also visual. The problem there is we're automatically turning off 60% of the population who are not visual, the 40% that are kinesthetic and the 20% that are auditory. So one of the great tricks, one of the great methods to captivating 100% of the audience when we're looking at these representational systems is to use language, use predicates, use wording that appeals to all three. And to give you a really quick example, you can really allow this information to land on you. And I hope that you can really see what I'm saying and that you hear my message and it's coming through loud and clear. So just there in the course of two
Mhm.
sentences, I cycled through all three of the primary representational systems. And, different people, depending on where they land on that spectrum, would metaphorically lean in at different times. And so if you're cycling through all of those in your writing, then you're going to be pulling in, more and more of your audience. You're not going to be leaving 60% of the money on the table, so to speak.
Got it. And this is why I think a lot of people, the whole video thing has been so popular, especially with things like TikTok and now even Reels on Instagram and everything like that, because people are visual and they do want to hear. But the thing is, they can't really touch. But I think that's why even pet videos are so popular, because there's a lot of videos out there where just people are kind of petting their pets. And it's because people get to feel like what that would feel like, but so they get to see it, right? So if people were to kind of transfer this into business and how they can kind of allow the customer to somehow experience their service or their product is for if you have a product, let's say, to really demonstrate that product, to show it, to zoom in on it, to really the client gets to see the texture of the product. Would you agree?
Absolutely, I would agree. Your spa example was a really good example. If I was describing a spa service, I would describe, how is it going to feel, when a person walks into this room and the temperature is perfect and the atmosphere is perfect, how's that going to feel? What are they going to see? The lights will be dimmed, beautiful, ornate furniture, maybe a small, tuft of smoke coming off of an incense, a burning piece of incense. What are they going to hear? Relaxing, new age, nature, sounds of nature, right? If we can include, that type of, information, and even you now just listening to me describe this is probably creating vivid imagery in your mind. You can probably actually picture the spa, and how much more powerful is that than just saying, our spa is the #1 rated spa in the Greater Toronto area, here's our prices, 10% off next Tuesday, right? Because one of them is appealing more to the conscious mind, the sort of data side of things, and the other one is appealing to that unconscious, the imagination, where our emotion, where our actual, decisions and interests and feelings exist.
What are the three tips to writing effective copy on social media? What are the three things people should always keep in mind?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think my #1 tip when it comes to writing copy, when it comes to writing anything to, to communicate a message, is to really imagine, the individual that you're speaking to, and imagine as you're writing that they're in front of you and you're saying these things to them. It's very easy to, go into this salesy, babble when we're writing on the computer and there's no human beings in the room. But if you can imagine you're having a real conversation with a real person, a friend of yours, and your friend is saying, "Hey, what's your business all about? What have you got going on these days?" You would have a very conversational tone with them. Your feeling and your enthusiasm would come through in your wording automatically. So tip #1, I would say, is imagine your ideal customer, your ideal audience, an individual, not as a group, as an individual, and speak to them in your writing. Speak to them in your writing. My next tip would be to, again, we talked about the rep systems, the representational systems, cycle through them. Cycle through touchy-feely language, describe how are things going to feel? What does it feel like? Let the information land on the person. That's a good metaphor. Then go to auditory. What is it? How does this sound to you? We can use words that just sort of stimulate the auditory part of people's brains, right? And then the visual. Visual is the easiest, right? We can describe what does this look like for you? What is it going to look like? And so on. So that's tip number 2, cycle through kinesthetic, auditory, and visual languaging in your writing, okay? And, once you've heard this and you learn this, as you're reading good copy, you're gonna start noticing that excellent professional copywriters do this. If you look at the Dan Kennedys of the world, they do this automatically. It comes up in their writing. And then the last tip, I would say, especially in the world of captions and needing to capture your audience quickly, because you need to capture your audience in the first 1 or 2 lines of your caption or of your copy. Otherwise, they're not going to make it to the body. A great way to do that is to start with an intriguing question. Start with an intriguing question. Think about what your service or your product solves, and then what's the problem associated to that, and create a question. So I teach coaches, things like hypnotherapy and NLP. One of the big problems that I solve is that, coaches don't know how to get quick and efficient results with their clients. So if I were to start a caption with, hey, would you like to get, results for your clients in half the time that you're used to? That's going to draw in a lot of people in my target market, in my target niche, right? And they're going to be more likely to listen to the remainder of my caption, my message. So those are my 3 big tips for writing good copy right there.
Yeah, so as you're talking, what I'm thinking is for people to keep in mind is, let's say you as a customer experience that product or service, and you were telling your best friend about it. And how would you describe that whole experience? So write in that way. The typical sales copy really doesn't work anymore. Back in the day, it was just about buy now, this and that. And now people really are more sensitive of being sold to. So you really do have to get creative with the way that you are phrasing things so that they don't feel like you're being salesy.
Yeah, and these days, consumers are more savvy while being more bombarded with messages, marketing messages than ever before. And there's an expectation. Consumers expect, even in a sales message, they expect value. Even in a post that's trying to sell a product or that's, announcing a product, they expect to learn something from that post. Something that's just a straight up offer with no, value. It's just buy this, buy it now. People are going to disregard that and they're going to move on. Like you say, that's the old way of doing things. Doesn't work anymore. You need to be giving value all the time, even in your copy, even when you're selling.
Right. And I really think the key is to experiment, because when you experiment, you actually see what works. Because sometimes you may think something works and it works on you. So you just automatically assume that's going to work on other people. And I can't tell you as a marketer how many times I have been surprised. So to be a good marketer, you really have to just be willing to test. So
Yeah.
test your copy and then look at your analytics and see what has been resonating with people. So you can, sometimes you don't even have to look at the analytics. You can just see it based on, you see how many likes you're getting, and then you see people commenting and saying, oh my gosh, that is so true, or oh my gosh, this and that. And anytime somebody's commenting to you with excitement, that's when you really know you've hit the spot. So another way that you can research on, effective copy is by looking at other people's Instagram posts and seeing, based on their account and how many followers they have, how much engagement they actually got with that particular post. So if you see some of their posts had some engagement while others posts had a lot of engagement, you have to analyze and see what they're doing right with that post. So really, it's just about experimenting, trying different things, and then finding what works, and then doing more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, really excellent point. Yeah.
If you're interested in learning more about social media marketing strategies, make sure that you check out these videos on the side here. All right, everyone, until next time, bye for now.